Scrum Open is probably like 42, 43 times for the product owner.
Wow. And when you were taking these, were you taking them independently? Were you taking them, on your own? Like, were you taking it here and then she was taking it and then you compare notes? Or were you taking it together, like going through questions together?
We did both. We did a lot of together just to kind of that way because there was a lot of times where it was like, I think it's this one, I think it's that one. It's like, well, we'll see. See
That's
who's right.
fun.
But we did that, and then I know I needed some extra work on the product owner. That was one maybe I took a little more. So definitely on my own, but we did a lot together just to kind of keep that collective mindset.
Wow. Wow. That is so good to know and understand. So do you think the product owner open and the leadership open added some value now that you've actually been through the real exam? Do you think it toughened you up a little bit?
I would say, yeah. With the real exam, I feel like there was on mine, there was sections. So there were certain sections where you had to be a really good Scrum Master. There were sections where you had to be a really good product owner. And then there were sections where you had to kind of step back and kind of dictate how Scrum was running for your team. So definitely all those pieces will help you in certain parts.
That is so good to know. And as far as the exam, I've got a few points that I would like to touch on, and I would like for you to augment. But first and foremost, the PSM exam, like I said in the beginning, is important because you are looking at Scrum through the lens of one of the co-creators of Scrum. And this is an exam that is updated all the time by Ken's company. It also has a lot of street cred. So if you meet anyone who truly is in the world of Agile and they hear that you've done this exam, 80 questions in 60 minutes, is absolutely encouraging. And it just puts you one up on those who don't even have a clue about it. So it's multiple choice. You could choose more than one in some instances. It's 60 minutes. And the passing score is so high, 85. So when you talk about the PMP exam, the rumor mill about the score for PMP is nowhere as high as this. And back when it was publicly known, it was nowhere as high as this. And this is a pretty high passing score. So let's talk about how hard this exam was for you today. Let's hear first from Darian, because he is new to a lot of this world of certifications. So how did you feel the first few minutes when you started?
Yeah, so I did feel heavy that my exam was front loaded with more of the things I hadn't seen. So the thing is, you were right when I talked to you about taking the test and you explained it yourself. You're really up against time. So you don't have a lot of time to really second guess or really like question and go over it again, because then it really cuts down. And I was trying to keep track of my time while taking it to be at certain marks at a certain question at a certain time. So I feel like it was very just go with your mindset. If you can get into that mindset and really lock it makes it easier, because there was some where I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's these. I'm not 100% sure, but rule out these, they don't make sense, and just go with it. So I felt like it was a NASCAR event to just put what you think and keep going, because that was probably the hardest part, just battling time.
Yeah, and being disciplined to keep going. So did you kind of take a check when you were 30 minutes in? How many questions had you hit when you were 30 minutes in? Do you know?
Yeah, so at 30 minutes, I think I was just behind. I was probably at like 36. I had got right before the halfway point. I swear I got like a lot of long worded questions, but I was hopeful that I would get some short-ended questions right after that. And I had probably caught up around maybe 40, 45 minutes. I caught back up and I was in a good space.
Wow, it's a crazy battle. Cyndy, what about you, being that this is your second big one, PMP? Yeah, I mean, so was this more ferocious for you? Tell us.
For some reason, I feel like I had a better hang on time with
Okay,
PMP.
good. Oh, with PMP.
Yes, and PSM.
Wow.
Yeah, I felt like 60, 60 questions for 80 minutes. It was just going like this. And one thing I realized was that having the knowledge base was really important. So like to backtrack, before we started going heavy on the Scrum Open, we took time to read the Scrum Guide.
Okay.
Because that was like the foundation. Because like you can't even the Scrum Open, you're just gonna be guessing if you have found like a knowledge base of the Scrum framework.
Yeah.
So that was key. I was listening to like the audio, trying to like, that helped. But like as far as the whole exam, like when I was hitting around the 30 minutes, I felt like I was feeling like really quite edgy and anxious because I was looking at the time. And PMP, I finished early. And I just had time to look through like anything I wanted, like I had a second guess on. But with this, for some reason, I felt like time was really short. It was like shorter.
Wow. Where were you at 30 minutes in? Where were you at 30 minutes in? Do you know?
And I think I was like 38.
Oh, wow.
I feel like I was like 38, and then I just kept, as soon as I kept looking at the time, I said, you know what, I'm not gonna afford, I can afford.
It's just like that.
Yeah, I just kept like, once I read a question, I look at just one answer I locked in, that's it. And I was initially, I was like trying to read the options. But after that 30 minutes mark, I said, okay, I have to like speed up.
Wow.
So like I would just read a question, look for just the answer, lock it in. Anything that's like the answer, I just lock it in and move on to the next. That was what helped him. But like time is really
you're battling time, but you also can't just rush through it either. You have a certain range of error. So it's probably some questions that I would have double checked that I just didn't for a lack of time just to get through it. I'm like, I feel like it's this one. I would look it over again, but you got to keep going. And then there's also things on there that we prepared a lot with a lot of the practice questions. I mean, we probably had memorized them at that point.
Wow.
But there is certain things that you can't prepare for that's not going to be on the guides. That's why the mindset is important, because there's stuff that I was like, I have not seen this before. Not close. There are some questions where I could tell you the answer without even reading all the way through the questions, and the opposite end where I was like, I have no clue reading through it.
So, which is to be expected with Ken's exam. That's why I tell people, and to our friends out there who are watching, CSM is great. I've been for the class. I'm CSM certified, but I tell you, the PSM, there's something about that exam that if you are not prepared, if you're not, there's just no way. So you folks actually did better than I did at 30. For me, I'm a really slow reader. And at 30, I was on question 30. I was on question 30. I had 50 questions left to do in 30 minutes because I really didn't have someone to prepare me the same way I'm kind of telling you. I just had my buddy say, well, if you are good, you should be able to take it. So and that's my buddy Roy for you, because we've been trained together. And it's like, yeah, so if you really know your stuff, you should be able. So when I jumped in, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is even worse than like kind of Cindy's view. I'm like, I think this is worse than PMP. I think this is in terms of time. Like that. The time factor, you gotta, and it's very unforgiving. You barely have any time to check. Did you check at the end? And either of you?
I did briefly. So I wasn't sure when I got to the end. It said I saw the green button come say finish, but I wasn't sure if it was going to take me back, give me the opportunity to look at what the ones I had bookmarked.
Okay.
So being that I hadn't heard anybody say anything like that, I didn't want to chance it to just submit without like double checking.
Okay.
The ones I bookmarked. So I had to start like going backward.
Wow, yeah.
Which wasn't
you didn't want to take a chance on finishing.
Of just the ones I wasn't sure, the answers I wasn't sure. I didn't submit without making sure I was convinced that was the right option or choice I made. So
what about you, Darian? What did you do?
So I was actually pacing pretty well on the second half until I ran into maybe a couple questions at like 71, 72. So I think I finished with 5 minutes left, and I had
Okay.
seen the bar. There's a bar at the top left where it lets you see
Yeah.
all questions.
You see
So
all
I
of it. Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I clicked that, and I had about 7 bookmarked that I wanted to go back through. So I ran out of time doing it, but I got maybe 3 or 4 of those in. So it was about 4 that I probably didn't get to double check.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Wow. So for anyone who is thinking of going, I would recommend, based on what you shared, you got to go for that live engagement in Agile that will answer all the questions for you. And then having a study buddy, you cannot replace that. The kind of momentum both of you created in this short time is so commendable. And I know that you wouldn't have been able to do it alone, either of you working on your own. So I want to also give people that secret sauce to success is finding a study buddy, someone who is serious, who has skin in the game. I know Cyndy needed to get done with this, go back to, her stakeholders. She's a family person. I know you wanted to get done with this so you can hit the ground running and start knocking on doors and getting great opportunities. So it's better to work with someone who has skin in the game than a fair weather study buddy who is like, well, today I don't feel that motivated, so I'm not going to show up. Both of you were not like that. You were quite the opposite. So I want to applaud you for that. So for our friends watching on YouTube or elsewhere, you got any questions? Just put them in the chat. We'll be very happy to answer, but want to kind of solidify some strategies. So we talked about live training, understand the Scrum Guide is big, thoroughly study the Scrum Guide, group studying is big, the assessments that you both talked about is big. Take those open assessments and collaborate and engage in discussions. It's really just engagement, and move in volume. I know we had a bunch of questions in the Raw and Uncut book, but I kind of didn't ask you to focus on that. But I'm curious to know, were there any other Praizion kind of places in the book or questions online that you dabbled into, or was it primarily just Ken stuff?
It was mostly Ken stuff. I did go back and I looked at the Agile Saturdays videos that were out.
Oh,
So those were able
nice.
to put me in that mindset. But mostly my thought process was if this is where the questions are coming from, that's probably the best source to practice for those questions. And
Exactly.
for about 45 or probably I think 55% of it was, and then there were some others that just probably are either somewhere else or they don't exist until you take
Yeah.
the test.
Yeah, exactly. You got to take the test, and if you take it with a full tank of Scrum guide awareness, then you're going to do great. You're going to do great. So let me take you back. I know it went in a blur, right? It's a very quick exam, but let's talk about how relevant the roles, the artifacts, and the events were on the exam. If you're going to give it, so they're 9 or 3, 5, 3, 11, right? So if we're going to give each one about, let's say, 9%, would you break them down equally and say, okay, I give 9% to Scrum Master, 9% to Product Owner, and 9% to Development Team? Or are there some that to you stood out over the others? I don't want you to say it. I want you to type it into me privately because I want to use the Delphi technique for both of you. So just chat into me. Do any of the roles jump out? If so, send it to me privately. Do any of the artifacts jump out? If so, chat it into me privately. And the events, did any of them jump out? It's just an intuition test so that we can help our friends who are on the call. And while you're doing that, I'll talk to our friends here who are on YouTube. So for those on YouTube who might have joined or who are watching, I encourage you to send in any questions or doubts that you have so that we can clear them up. All right, so let's see what you thought of as far as the roles, the artifacts, and the events. Thank you very much. That is exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you. Good, good. Okay, that's good to know. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. And Cyndy, do the same. And I'll just say right here. And thank you very much. The reason why I'm doing this, I'm just trying to show folks that they need to have a pretty balanced view of the entire exam. Because when you ask each person different things, or same question rather, what you're going to get is different responses, depending on when the exam was taken and who took the exam. So the 353, the exam is not going to go outside of that. So things such as burn charts, burn up charts, burn down charts, those are not things that you would generally expect to find front and center of the exam, which makes it different from other Agile exams that are out there that may focus a little bit more tool and technique heavy. This is really just going to be within the confines of the 353. So moving on, another topic that was kind of talked about in the Scrum Guide that I often encourage people to hone in on is this on the screen, and it's the values. So let me ask you this. Regarding the values, did you see any questions that were heavy on the values of Scrum? What do you think?
Is that like over question? Or you want me to type it in?
No, you can just say it now. We're out of Delphi mode, and Cyndy, feel free to finish yours. So yeah, just Delphi mode.
Yeah, I didn't get a lot. I got a couple pertaining to those, but not really too much in that field.
Okay. What about you, Cyndy? Do you get a whole lot of the values of Scrum baked into the question?
A couple, just two. There was some, it didn't state, it gave like a scenario and then which of these
it's been
aligns with the value.
Okay.
Yeah. So a little bit like a PMI kind of structure, like some questions were very straightforward. Exhibited and wanted you to figure out what it was referring to.
Yeah. And I think some of those questions are pretty heavy situationally. They paint a scenario and they do it so well that you're like, I'm in Agile, but this sounds rather situational, pretty heavy. Yeah. Let's talk about the Scrum Master responsibilities. So out of all the Scrum Master responsibilities, and now you don't need to do this Delphi, but out of the Scrum Master responsibilities, if you're going to choose one that jumps out at you as being the most tested concept, which one would you say? Was it coaching, facilitating, impediment removal, self-organization promotion? What would it be? Instinctively.
I think the two I would say I got the most probably split of is facilitating Scrum events and coaching the team. Those two were, I got a hefty amount of Scrum Master. I swear it might have been like 1/4 of the test.
Wow. Interesting. Cyndy, what about you?
I would say coaching and split between coaching, removing impediment, and promoting self-organization. They wanted to know which of these aligns with the one of the values. They give a scenario. So that's which of these traits would you say aligns with like self-organizing team and the cross-functioning team? They have questions like that, quite a number of them.
Gotcha. Good to know. All right. Next, let's talk about these Scrum events. So if you're going to say one particular one jumps out at you out of the 5, would it be the sprint itself, like the time box? Because, it says the sprint is a heartbeat of Scrum. So I'm curious to know if that was big, or was it the other ones, or is it daily Scrum that jumps out? Which one? Or 2? Just maybe tell me 2, like Darian did the first time.
For me, the daily Scrum had a lot. You had to know, because I feel like with the time box, you can get a handle on the time box pretty well. Once you know the times,
Sure.
They're not too difficult. But I had a good amount of daily Scrum questions of like, what do you need to be doing? What is important? Who's there? Who's not there? Like, what is the purpose of it? So it was pretty in depth with that one, probably the most. That was probably the one I had to be most on guard with just a little bit of the other ones probably sprinkled in equally.
Cool. I totally agree. Yeah, I had a lot of questions in daily Scrum, what kind of questions
Right.
would you expect? Yeah, and then some sprint planning, but mostly daily Scrum heavy.
That's kind of what I suspected. Very good. When we talk about the artifacts, I know you've already given me some critique. So for those at home who are wondering how it all balanced out, they pretty much concurred when it comes to the concept of the daily Scrum. When it comes to the roles, the product owner was a little bit heavy in Cyndy's exam compared to Darian's exam. Darian's exam was more Scrum Master heavy. Cyndy's exam was more product owner heavy. And I'm kind of exposing this so that people understand you're not going to get exactly the same questions. You're not going to get exactly the same nuance. You could get something that's more product owner heavy. Yeah, so people need to understand that. And the product backlog, you've already kind of stressed that. The increments, not a whole lot of questions on that, huh?
No, personally, I didn't get a lot. Maybe a couple.
Couple here, couple there.
Okay. And then when it comes to these so-called tools, we often get people who are very tool conscious. I mean, after coming from the world of other certifications, so they're worried about burn up charts, burn down charts, and cumulative flow diagrams and all that. Did you remotely get any such thing?
I remember one burn down answer, or question I answer. One burnout question, but nothing too crazy on that. I think the Scrum Master took all those spots up.
Yeah.
Room.
Yeah. And I'm guessing it's the same for all these suspects, the burn ups, the CFDs, and and all these other tools that people get wound up about these days. And I have nothing against tools like Jira and Confluence and Rally version 1. All those are all good, but the exam is not about that. So for people who are asking, is the exam about tools? No, it's not about tools. Let's talk about some of the trapdoors and pitfalls, because on my exam, this whole anti-pattern stuff, without calling it anti-pattern, they kind of want to make sure you know that the daily Scrum is not a status meeting. I remember getting questions that really drill down to make sure you know that. But as far as other things, such as decide for the team, I got some of those where you would be given the option to decide what the team does, or you would be given the option to tell them what to go do, and things such as that. The exam could have some of those anti-good Scrum values options that you definitely want to be able to identify. Did you feel tricked in some of the questions, like compared to the PMP? Let me ask Cyndy this. Compared to the PMP, what was the trickery level? Like PMP, a lot of people say, oh, I just felt I was being tricked all the way. The questions were very tricky. Did you feel the same in this?
There wasn't a lot of those. I mean, a lot of trick-free questions. Just sometimes they would just put manager, then and you were thinking, and then project manager as well.
Yeah, they did do that. I'm sure.
And you would think, but this sounds good.
It did sound good. Yeah. They're so bad. They're so tricky. So if you were going to give some final tips, let's say I'm just off the street, I've got no education in the world of Scrum or Agile, and you wanted to give me some advice about how to tackle this exam. But let's say I've got a degree, or let's say I'm out of high school, and you wanted to give me some advice. Darian, what advice would you give me as a newbie?
So basically just start by learning how Scrum works, just in its, the 3-5-3. And I would say definitely the 5-3 part, taking the roles out of it, understand the artifacts, understand what each stage does. And then when you go into the 3, obviously the Scrum Master, product owner, developers, one thing that I had mentioned was there was a lot of questions, or maybe not a lot, but there's a good amount of how do these relationships work together and who's doing what together. I got a lot of, if you're the Scrum Master and the product owner is dealing with this, how do you help them? So you got to know both roles and how they work together to kind of, be able to find the answer together. So I would say once you get a feel of the 5-3 and kind of know what each artifact does, then focus on the 3 and the relationships between them and what best will work for people, because you're making decisions for other team members kind of in a scenario. And if you kind of know how to best put them forward and how to best put the organization forward, I think you'll do just fine if you put in the time.
That's superb, Darren. And as far as hours daily of study, if you were going to give someone just a rough order of magnitude for how many hours you put in over the 3 weeks daily, what would you kind of say on average?
If you did it every day for 3 weeks, I would say if you put an hour 15 aside and you're doing, because we didn't do it every day, but some days we did more than an hour. We probably maybe did 2 hours and things like that, and put in our own time. But if you were doing it every day, I think a good recipe would be, one, take each test every day. Take them every day. You'll continue that, and then read your Scrum guide. I mean, I had my Scrum guide like right here, just in case it was something that I was like, okay, this is a little more in depth than just the general question. So a lot of pieces you can pull from that'll get you more prepared for those. So I would say about an hour. If you do an hour, then you read your Scrum guide, I think you'll be okay.
That's very good advice. Now, Cyndy, what advice would you give someone who may have taken the PMP and is thinking about doing this? How many hours? Is it kind of similar to what Darren said, or did you spend less time, or did you focus on other things when you were studying alone?
I think having a study buddy helps. Else you can study alone, but it seems a little more dry.
Yeah.
When you take questions, tackle questions, you get the other person, guessing. It might totally be like a blind area for you, and you learn something instead of like referring to the book at that time. You learn something, it sticks better. So knowing your learning style, but definitely a study, it's like having an accountability partner that just helps you even build the momentum. Okay, I got to study this time. Oh, we have this area to cover. One thing I would say too is don't rely 100% on the Scrum Open. Don't make that the strongest indicator that you're prepared. I'll just say that. Yes, that is not that's not a good indicator that you have it locked down. The Scrum guide, study like your Bible back to back. And then take the Scrum, because from my experience, yes, we did the Scrum Open a zillion times that we could recite most of the questions. I'm not kidding. Some would just see before we, oh yeah, this is the answer. We got to that point. However, the real exam wasn't like that.
Wow.
There were a few of those like sprinkled. Yeah. But it got you thinking. So if you rely solely on just the Scrum, because even the questions were so repetitive, doing the Scrum Open, you won't learn a lot of new things. So don't rely strongly on that. Don't rely solely on the Scrum, just doing the Scrum Open thing, you're good. You need to really get some time out to study the Scrum guide end to end, and then find if you can find like some scenario-based questions so that you just take yourself out of that box of this is how I thought. I told Darren, I said, if the real exam is going to be like, I'll be done in like 20 minutes.
If it was,
like,
we would
we'll finish
the Scrum Open in like 5 minutes.
The Agile questions and the pro in like 15 minutes, we'll be done.
Wow.
That quick. We're like, oh, we know this. But then the real thing, we're like sweating, like,
wow. So even harder than the product owner open and the Agile leadership, huh?
Yeah. So we took all those practice, back to back.
Yeah.
And we were good. We thought, like after the first couple of times we met, we said, oh, we're good. We can just get it for this exam and take any time. But just go. We took time to start reviewing the glossary to know what the terms. So don't sleep on the glossary. Don't sleep on the Scrum guide. That would really help you, get some things out from if you want to do audio. But you need to really understand some of those concepts. The roles, they could interchange some things. There's some things that are tricky questions about who do you think should step on here when the product owner is not there. And there's some questions that I would say like, for me, out of the 80 questions, I would say like maybe 50, even 60 questions were like, they just sprinkle on the Scrum.
So about 60 brand new difficult.
No kidding. So if you rely strongly on that, you might be screwed.
Yeah,
So,
they'll ask them in a different way than you've seen before. So
yes,
it's not one you can just look at it and be like, oh, I know. You're like, oh, I got to read this and
yes,
make
Wow.
sure.
Wow.
But I
yes.
think
That
another good point of what we didn't mention with working together is I think there was some stuff that I know definitely for Cyndy, there's some stuff that she understood that I didn't, and they'll give you like a paragraph of like why this is wrong, but having somebody explain it to you and like
Okay.
no, like, oh, it's this way and this is why this is the
Yeah.
answer. It
Yeah.
helped work a lot better. Your curve of understanding goes a lot faster.
I am really so excited. And Cyndy, I hate to give you more assignments, but since you and Darren work so well together, do you see the train coming?
I told him I'll be happy to help if he needs that. Yeah.
You see the train coming because I'm always looking for opportunities. And I think you would just what he described about you explaining, I think it'll take you to the next level. And I'm honestly extremely proud, extremely happy, very delighted. I'm glad you found value from the Praizion Agile course, the online stuff that Roy had. I know you watched some of Roy's videos. So I'm really excited that it all paid off. And honestly, I'm just looking for next level. So whatever that your next level is, Cyndy, you already know because Cyndy is part of my Project Leadership Institute. I couldn't be prouder. I couldn't be. So I'm very proud of what you've done. And Darren, I'm very proud of what you've done. I'm so excited that your mom got us connected, and a shout out to Jerry as well, because honestly, all this stuff started with her intervention. So please extend my huge gratitude to your mom for connecting us, and to your dad for supporting you in this journey, because he's been there, done that. He's got a whole other sort of
a lot of experience.
But I know that he definitely supported you along the way, and I'm extremely proud. I'm just looking for what comes next, and we're going to work on that next. So for our friends at home who are just looking for us to consolidate this, you got to manage your time effectively. You heard what Cyndy said. This exam is ferocious. It's crazy. Read the questions and answer options carefully, but not so carefully that you're spending 2 minutes on a question, right? You heard what she said about eliminating those things and just locking in and going with it, and trust your knowledge and going with your instincts. That's extremely big, like Darren says, like the NASCAR, you just gotta keep going, you gotta keep rolling and moving. It's very true. So regarding the lessons learned, don't just rely on the Scrum Guide. You gotta read far and wide, as far as take the quizzes, Agile Leadership, Scrum Master Open, as well as Product Owner Open. And even then, those are not the best indicators alone. You got to do a lot more. I think coming for our course, the Praizion course, it definitely enabled you to be able to ride that crazy beast, because without any guidance whatsoever, I think a layman might struggle. And I think Darren hit the nail on the head when he said, like when Darren and I met for the first time, we spent some time going over the Agile Manifesto, which takes me to another question. Do you think the Agile Manifesto, really knowing it inside out, gives you also another competitive edge? Did you kind of trace any Agile Manifesto-ish dialogue in the question?
I didn't see it because I kind of stuck to the Scrum Guide, like it was my Bible for this one. So because I knew that it was so directly associated with that, I mean, I didn't want to run the risk, because I've been through the Agile Manifesto maybe 2-3 times where I've really looked at it. But this one, I really want to stick to the Scrum Guide because I knew that's where the test was coming from. So that was your source material. So I kind of not try, because everybody has their own tips to how you do this. But I always feel like if you're as close to the source as possible, then you'll at least, like the Scrum Open helped a lot with just getting similar questions, even though they weren't the same. It put you in the same kind of mindset versus taking a outdoor Agile course that may help, but you may get something completely different when you hop into the test.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. So I think everything together has helped, is elevated you. And I can tell you the same thing that my buddy Roy told me when I got PSM certified. He said, yeah, you definitely know your Agile. You definitely know your Scrum. He told me I definitely know. And he's very correct. You folks definitely know your Scrum and you know your Agile. And I will encourage you to just keep on putting it into real world. Don't lose it. I want to challenge you next level. So Cyndy, you got PSM, you got PMP. Next level, we got to get you into the PSPO. And honestly, it's really just to accentuate the understanding of these things. when we disconnect from YouTube, I'm going to share with you personal stories that will help you understand the context of what you just accomplished. It's for your ears only, not for everyone else. But other people will be able to watch this and get the base of what they need to do to get PSM certified. I also want people to know that if they're stuck and struggling and they need one-on-one help, they need one-on-one advice, they can always go to the Praizion sites, maybe sign up for a masterclass and do just the Agile piece. It'll get you up to speed. Get the Agile Run and Cut book from Roy and I. Go to PM Anonymous if you need one-on-one training, or if you just want to check out our other content, go to praizion.com. But putting all of these things together is going to help elevate you to get you to the point that our friends are at, which is as PSMs who've truly shown that they didn't just read the Scrum guide, they know how Agile and Scrum work. So well done. I'm extremely proud. Any final comments before we disconnect from YouTube and our friends out there?
Yeah, I mean, if you like I said, it's all the time thing. If you put in the time, you should be fine. Just practice it. I mean, we probably had maybe like 20 pages of document information of just definitions, questions, things like that to go over, and still when you took the test, it was like, oh, okay, like it's not gonna go smoothly, but
Wow.
I'm prepared. I'm prepared. I know I can figure out, if I don't know it off the bat, I can figure it out by reading it. So just put in time, you'll be okay, like with anything.
Awesome. Cyndy, any final comments?
I would say you know yourself best. If you think you need help, like a class, register. If you think you just need a study buddy, get that. If you are best, if you learn best by going solo, do that, buckle up. But you definitely need to invest the time in yourself and in what you want to learn too.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much. I'm extremely proud, and I look forward to our next adventures. Thank you very much. And Cyndy, don't forget, you got to claim a PDU for giving back to the community through these lessons learned. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, everyone. Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see you as a PSM as well. Bye for now.